Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Sruti smriti purananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavad padam Shankaram loka Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra bhashya krudo vande bhagavanto punah punaha. So we are continuing our discussion on this Anandamaya Adhikaranam, and I hope today we will be able to complete this and go on to the next Adhikaranam, that is Antaradhikaranam. So we will conclude this Anandamaya Adhikaranam. So I would like to draw your attention to where we left in the last session, one important point that we discussed. Those who have got the text, you can just look at the text. Natu anandamayasya brahmatvam asti. This is an important point that was established in the last 2-3 paragraphs. So these are important thing. So anandamaya padasya brahmarthatve brahmapucham iti na samanjasam nahi tadeva avayavi avayavascheti yuktam. So Vajaspati in his Bhamati Tiga makes a concluding statement. Anandamaya padasya brahmarthatve brahmapucham pradishtha iti na samanjasam nahi tadeva avayavi avayavascheti yuktam. So if Anandamaya is interpreted as Brahman, to mean Brahman, then Brahma Pucham Padishta, that concluding statement of the entire Prakarana or Prakrita will be totally a mismatch. So they won't go together. So there will be no reconciliation. There will not be any coordination between the statement of the fifth paryaya, of the fifth kosha, that is Edasma Vijnanamaya Anyontar Atma Anandamaya. That's the last, the fifth kosha mentioned here. And beyond that, there is the end. Pucham could also mean not only tail, but it could mean asraya, adhisthana, the sustaining principle, and also the end. That also is a meaning for pucha. Pucha means the tail. The tail is the last end of a bird, and is the tail that actually sustains, preserves the bird from falling down. So that's why it is called the sustaining principle. Padana pradibandhagatturubam asrayatvam puchatvam. So what is the role of a tail of a bird? So if we can compare, there is no comparison like that, but to understand the actual meaning of puchatvam as interpreted by Shankaracharya as the Siddhanta. So you find the entire Anandamaya Adhikaranam is interpreted in multi-layered dialectical channels. First, there is a view that Anandamaya means jiva, or maybe pradhanam, which is achetana. Then the Vrittigara enters and he says, no, it is not jiva, it is not just a kosha, it is, Anandamaya is Paramatma. That is the theory of Vrittigara. And for that he gives a hermeneutical twist to the Maya Pratyaya by saying that Maya Pratyaya has got Vigararthatvam or Vigarartha in the first 4 koshas, that is Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya. But the last one, its meaning is Prachurya. It has got Prachuryartham. So, but Bhashyakara again, the Siddhanta interpretation of the entire Prakarana or Adhikaranam comes to the end of this Bhashya. So that should be kept in mind. Certain sutras are interpreted according to Vrittigara, And later, Bhashyakara enters and he gives the final conclusion to this. So, pucha is nothing but something that prevents the bird from falling from the sky. So, padana pradibandhagattu rupam asayatum. So, that's why it becomes the sustaining principle, the protecting principle, the asraya, the adhishthanam, or pradishta or support of the bird. So the point is that puchatvam in the context of the particular Taittiriya portion, that puchatvam is good gauna. It is gaunatvam. It is not in the primary sense. Because the primary sense it can be in avayava. But it is not avayava. It is the sustaining principle in which that puchatvam is interpreted here. And then another very important point is this, that is the Lakshanika perspective. So Lakshana means Lakshana. If you take the Lakshanartha, then you have to understand that the natural conclusion of this Prakaranam is Brahma Bucham Pradishtha. Because the Upakrama Vakya, that is the first principle in the Talpari Linga, Upakrama Upasamkhara Abhyasa Apurvada Phalam Arthavada Upavotticha Lingam Talpari Nirnaya. So Upakrama is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So Brahman is mentioned there. But Brahman is not mentioned in the Vijnana, Anyantara Atma Anandamaya. That is the Vrittikara's view of the conclusion of the whole Prakarana. But there is no Brahman mentioned in that context. Brahman is mentioned later. That's why Bhashyakara, Shankaracharya, extends it beyond the Anandamaya Kosha and comes to the end of it, that is Brahma Bucham Pradishtha. So Brahman is mentioned, Brahma Pada is mentioned in the Brahma Bucham Pradishtha. It is also mentioned in the earlier portion, that is in the Satyam Jnanam Anandam Brahma, which is Upakrama. So that's why Bhashyakara says here, Natu Anandamayasya Brahmatvam Asti. And again, that point comes here again, Priya Shirastwadibir Hedubiri Idi Avochama. Because Anandamaya cannot be called Brahman, because Tasya Priyameva Shiraha, Modu Dakshina Paksha, Pramodu Uttara Paksha. So there is Avayavattum, that is different Avayavas, parts, and also Shira, etc. are mentioned here. So that is so natural for Brahman. It is natural only for something which is a vikara. So Bhashyakara will conclude that even Anandamaya also is a vikara. That is, vikarartha should be used to interpret the Maya Pratyaya in the Anandamaya Shabda. So Tasma Sutyandare Vijnanam Anandam Brahma Iti Ananda Pradipadikasya Brahmani Prayogadarshanath. So another Sudhi Vakya has been Vijnanam Anandam Brahma, etc. Vijnanam and Anandam Brahma is mentioned here. Here, to indicate Brahman, only Pratipadika is used. Maya Pratyaya is not used. Ananda is used. Vijnanam Anandam Brahma. Not Anandam Maya Brahma, but Anandam Brahma. Anandam is the Pratipadika. Maya Pratyaya is excluded, not included. Therefore, and that is a conclusion, Ananda is repeated. Abhyasa comes only in Ananda Pada, not in Ananda Maya Shabda. So, Idi Ananda Pratipadikasya Brahmani Prayoga Darshanat. So, in this Vijnanam Anandam Brahma is mentioned here. That is only Pratipadika. So that is where Abhyasa happens. Abhyasa means repetition. Abhyasa is one of the Shadvidhalankas in interpreting the Tatparya, the essence, the theme of a statement or a book or whatever it is. So Yadesha Akasha Anando Nasyad, etc. I mean, if there is no Ananda, if there is no Ananda in this place, if this Ananda did not exist in Akasha, in that context, what happens, So that means there also Ananda is used. So in other words, there is no Abhyasa of Anandamaya Shabda. There is Abhyasa only of Ananda Shabda, which means the Maya Pratyaya is not included. Therefore, the Ananda is Brahman, not Anandamaya. Yadesha Akasha Anandonasya ityadi Brahma Visheka Prayogo Natu Anandamaya Abhyasa idi avagantavyam. Na Anandamaya Shabdasya Abhyasaga Kindu Ananda Padasya Abhyasaga. Therefore, what is the theme of the whole Prakarana or Prakritam? It is Ananda. What is Ananda? Ananda is Brahman, not Anandamaya. Anandamaya is a vikara of Ananda. Ananda is the essence of it. So if you think of five, let's say five entities, innermost, comes Anandamaya, the fifth kosha. But Ananda is the innermost of even the fifth kosha. That is Ananda. And that Ananda is Brahman. That is Brahma Bhashyam Pradishtha. That is the essence. That is the last word. That is the Asraya. Yastu ayam mayanandasyeva shabdasya abhyasaha edam anandamayam atmanam upasankramadi iti natasya brahma vishettum asti. I already mentioned this earlier, So mayanandasya, so maya pratyaya used here. What is maya pratyaya used here? It's maya pratyaya and the ananda pada. It is used here. If this question may be raised, but Bhashyakara says this doesn't indicate Brahman. Why? Because this Anandamaya comes in the natural flow, in the Padyaya Parambara, in this natural succession of the four koshas mentioned. And therefore, the Anandamaya cannot be Brahman. Anandamaya may be one of the koshas, just like Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, Anandamaya kosha. So Anandamaya kosha is also a vikara. It is only an evolute, a modification of Ananda. This is the view of Bhashyakara Shankaracharya. Remember, here Bhashyakara is refuting the views of Vrittikara, who said that Anandamaya is different from the other four koshas, because the other four koshas are interpreted in Vigarartha. Maya Pratyaya in the other four koshas is interpreted in Vigarartha, but in Anandamaya Shabda it is interpreted in Prajulyartha. This is the view of Vrittikara, that is, you may call it Upavasha, but most probably it is Bodhayana. So Bodhayana's view is that Anandamaya Shabda should be interpreted differently. The Maya Pratyaya has got a different meaning. That is Maya Pratyartha. So that's already mentioned here earlier. There is a sutra already mentioned. Bhashyakara will go to the sutra. Vikar Shabda na idichet na prajurya. That is actually a vindication or a statement of the Vrittikara Madam. But that will be refuted by Bhashyakara, who says that no. You cannot just bring a new interpretation of Mahapratyaya just for Anandamaya. Anandamaya also should be interpreted just like the other four koshas. So we cannot say it is different from Vigarartha. Bhashyakara says it is also Vigarartha. Okay, this is an important point. Natasya Brahma Vishettum Asti. Why? What's the reason? The reason is Vigaratmanam eva annamayadinam anatmanam upasankramitavyanam pravahe padhitattuad. Pravaha means the succession, the natural succession of some statements that come under another, which is actually prakarana. So in the same prakarana, in the same context, you interpret one word in one manner, then in the same prakarana, in the same context, you cannot give the same word a different meaning without a substantial reason. There are examples in the Sutra Bhashya also where mithya could mean asat in one context. The next paragraph, mithya, could mean anivachaniya in another context. But there is a proper reason, philosophical explanation for the change of interpretation of the same word. Okay, so this is a very important point. So again, of course, there is another important point. Remember, etam anandamayam atmanam upasankramati, mentioned here. That is also very important, unless that's the technical point. This etam annamayam atmanam upasankramati, edam vijnanamayam atmanam upasankramati, edam pranamayam atmanam the upasankramanam is mentioned in the context of all the other four koshas. Here also is mentioned here. Edam anandamayam atmanam upasankramati. So Bhashyakara takes pains to say that here the meaning of upasankramanam is not prapti. The meaning is ullankhya agre gacchati or ullankhati. That's a real meaning. That is, you reach that, then go beyond that, transcending. That's the meaning here. Edam anandamayam atmanam upasankramati. This does not mean anandamayam atmanam prapnodi, but the actual meaning according to Bhashyakara is ullankhya agre gacchati or ullankhati, going beyond adisankramati. So what is that which goes beyond Anandamaya? That is Brahman, because Brahman is the innermost of all koshas, including Anandamaya, is the fifth kosha. And that is the support, that is the asraya, that is the adhishtanam, the sustaining principle. And the example of this, the word pucham, the Bhashyakara will say, pucha shabda is not the primary sense, it is not mukhyartha, it is gaunartha. We'll come to it later. Here a Purvapaksha means Shanka, maybe an Ashanka or a doubt, a different view. Nanu anandamayasya upasankramidavyasya annamayadivat abrahmatte sati naiva vidusho brahmaprapti phalam nirdishtam bhaved. So here is an important objection. The objection is this. If you argue that Annamaya also is just one of the vikaras, one of the koshas, and if it is not Brahman, then what is the use of realizing that? So this is a dosha, that's what he says. So Annamayadivat abrahmatte. If Anandamaya is also not Brahman, then what's the use of it? Because that Vrittikara doesn't agree with the idea of extending the interpretation beyond Annamaya. Beyond Anandamaya. According to Vrittikara, Anandamaya is the last point. It doesn't agree with the Advaiti's view of going beyond Anandamaya. Because according to him, Anandamaya is Ishvara, Paramatma, nothing beyond that. That's again, remember, that is the Ramanuja Shankara or Visishtadvaita Advaita contrast can be seen here. If Ramanuja had taken the idea from Vrittikara, who is the Vrittikara Bodhayana, who is establishing the view that Anantamaya has got this prachuryam of abundance of all exquisite qualities, just like the Ishvara Sankalpa of Vishtadvaita has got is a Sakala Kalyana Guna Nidhi, then it can very easily understand. It can be understood. So then if Annamaya, if Anandamaya is not Brahman, then what's the use of realizing it? No, Anandamaya is Upasankramita. So Anandamaya is something that is be transcended. That is Parityajya Agre Gacchati. That's the meaning of Upasankramanam according to Advaita. You attain it, leave behind and go beyond and transcend. Up to Anandamaya and then beyond Anandamaya, Brahma Bhashyam Pratishta. This is Advaita view. But Vrittigara, his evolution stops with Anandamaya, which is Paramatma. So he says, if Anandamaya is not the last point, then how will you get moksha prapti? So Bhashyam is Naisha Doshaka. Anandamaya upasankramana nirdeshenaiva puchya pradishtha bhuda brahma praptehi parasya nirdishtatvat tadapesha slogo bhavadi yato vajo nivartande ityadina cha prapanchamanatvat. So, by the very fact that you have reached Anandamaya, you actually get Brahmajnanam, because once you reach Anandamaya, you also attain what lies beyond Anandamaya. The support, the asraya, the adhishthanam of Anandamaya, and Anandamaya itself cannot be eternally separated. So, even if you take in the physical example a bird, let's say Anandamaya is bird and Pucham is the tail of the bird. If you catch the tail of the bird, then you don't have to go a long distance to reach the bird itself. Do you give an example? Because this doesn't come in the Bhashya. Just give food for thought. So once you reach Anandamaya, then automatically you have already attained the adhishthanam of Anandamaya. What is the adhisthana of Anandamaya? Brahman. That is Pucham, means Pradishtha, Asraya, etc. And that means, what does it mean? It means Pucha Pradishtha Bhuda Brahma Praptehi. So this Brahman is Anandamayasya Pucha Pradishtha Bhuda. Brahman is the Pradishtha of Anandamaya. So Anandamaya Upasankramana Nirdeshenaiva. Once you attain Anandamaya, then you naturally also attain this mukti. So Upasankramanam here means, remember, Upasankramanam doesn't mean prapti. Upasankramanam here means ullanghanam. Parityajya agre gacchadi. Agre gamanam, that's the real meaning of here, the point here. So automatically, by the very fact that you have attained Anandamaya, automatically you get the result of attaining Brahman, Brahma Prapti. Tadapesha slogo bhavadi etc. The reason is this comes later. Tadapesha slogo bhavadi. This mantra is there. But and the yato vajo nivartande aprapya manasasaha. That is vajar, that is beyond beyond word, beyond mind, avang manasagocharam. So avang manasagocharatum is applicable only for nirvishesham Brahma, not for savishesham Anandamaya or saguna sagara savishesha Ishvara. Because Ishvara or Prattigara's Paramatma, who is Ishvara only, has got a name. It is upasya. You meditate on Ishvara. And that Ishvara has got name. You do Sahasranama for Ishvara. So you cannot say it is avang manasagocharam. You have got prayers, you have got nama, mantra, all these are used to indicate to do upasana of Ishvara. So avang manasagocharatum is applicable only for nirvishesham Brahma, which is Brahma Bhashyam Pradishtha. because that comes immediately after the Tadapesha slogo bhavadi yato vajo nivartande ityadina cha prapanchamanatva. This is prapanchanam yato vajo nivartande. This prapanchanam is not the prapanchanam of Anandamaya, it is the prapanchanam of Brahman. Why? Yato vajo nivartande aprapi manasasaha. Mind and word tried to explain or reach or define or understand Brahman, but they couldn't do. They came back empty-handed without reaching there. That is avang manasa gocharam. So avang manasa gocharatam applies only for nirvishesham Brahma. That is a central theme here. Why? Satyam jnanam anandam Brahma is the beginning, upakrama. So the natural end should be an indication or description of some reality which is the same Brahman. That is nirvishesham Brahma. That is yato vajo nivartandi aprapya manasasaka, etc. Yatu anandamaya sannidhani sokamayada bahusyam prajaye iti iyam sutihi udahrida sa brahma buccham pradishtha ityanena sannihita tarena brahmana sambandhyamana na anandamaya brahmadam pradibodhayati. That is another important point. Yatu anandamaya sannidhani. Sannidhana means nearby, proximity. That's the idea. Sokamayada bhugusyam prajayaya. This mantra comes in the same context where Anandamaya is mentioned. So, one may argue that this Sokameda, that Brahman did Sankalpa and let me become many, let me become many, let me create this world and so on. The Sruti comes. Iyam Srudihi Udakrida Sa Brahma Buccham Pradishta Ityanena Sannihita Tarena Brahmana Sambandhyamana. That's a very important point. So, that's Sruti Vakya, that is Sokameda Bhugusyam Prajayiti, etc. It is closer, or rather closer proximity, nearer to the statement that is Brahma Buccham Pradishta. Why? It is Ityanena Sannihita Tarena. Sannihita Tara means closer, nearer, in closer proximity. So, when Brahma Buccham Pradishta is mentioned, Anandamaya is also mentioned. And then there is Sokamaya, Bhugusyam Prayayidi, etc. So how do you connect what is the nearest, that which is closer to Sokamaya, Bhugusyam Prayayidi, etc.? That is Brahma Buccham Pradishta. So it will be interpreted in the context of Brahma Buccham Pradishta and not in the context of Anandamaya Shabda. That's the idea behind. Therefore, na Anandamayasya Brahmadam Pradibodheti, because it is closer to Brahma Buccham Pradishta. So, this statement doesn't explain or describe or indicate Anandamaya. That's the idea behind. Tadapekshatvacha uttarasya grandhasya raso vai saha ityadehi na Anandamaya vishayada. Not only that, even going beyond that, there is another state, Reso Vaisaha, Ityadehi, na Ananda Vishayada. So Resa is Ananda. Resa is Ananda, not Ananda Maya. And that Brahman is Resa, is Ananda. So naturally, it is not indicating Ananda Maya, it is indicating Brahman. Here Purvapakshin goes ahead and he has another thing to state, and is a very another argument he is putting forward that should be kept in mind. So we have to remember one thing, that is this Puccha Shabdam, Puchatvam is Gauna, and Puccha Shabdam should be understood as Asraya, Adhisthana, the sustaining principle, the support, the end, the final essence, the ultimate foundation. So that's a meaning to be understood in connection with the Puccha Shabdam. But the analogy or rather the use of pucha, which maybe in dictionary it means tail, that is used only because that particular statement comes in the context where avayavas are used in connection with the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, etc., Anandamaya, etc. One is Tasya Priyameva Shiraha Modu Dekshana Paksha Utpramadu Uttara Paksha, etc. So in that context it is used. That's why Puchavat Pucham. Pucham here doesn't mean tail or avayava. It is like that. In other words, you can say, just like the tail becomes the support. Without tail, a bird cannot negotiate, it cannot move, it cannot fly, it cannot have any support by flying in the sky. It may fall down. Like that, Brahman is the Padishta Asraya of Anandamaya. In that's the meaning used here. Okay, now. Now here is a doubt. Okay, the doubt already mentioned, the samshaya, that is, it comes here. Tasmad bhaya tasmad akasha sambhudaha ityatra pullingena api atmashabdena brahmana prakrtatvat. That's only response. Nanu sokameda idi brahmani pullinga dirdesho navavadiri. That's actually Purvapakshi. Shankara Dauda Purvapaksha view. That is, Saha is Tatshabda. And this Pullinga. So Kameda, Saha Akameda. It is Tatshabda. Sa is Tatshabda. It's a Pullinga. So that may be more appropriate in the context of Anandamaya, which is also Pullinga Shabda. Anyantaratma Anandamaya. That is a Taitriya mantra is there. Anyantara Atma. Vijnanamaya, Anyantara Atma, Anandamaya is mentioned here. The Anandamaya Shabda is Pullinga, masculine gender. Sokamayada, Bhashyam, Prajaya, etc. There also Saha is that Shabda, that is also Pullinga Shabda. So there may be room for doubt, samshaya. The Saha is Anandamaya. At the same time, Brahma Shabda is Napumsalinga, it's neutral gender. So the Advaitin's view is, it is not so, because Tasma edasmat atmana akasha sambhudaha, it comes later. So, Yatu Bhargavi Varini Vidya Sanandovi, etc. Tasmat edasmat atmana akasha sambhudaha. There also, Tat Shabda is there, edasmat is there, Akasha is there, so all is all there. So Atmanaha mean Brahmanaha. Tasmat va edasmat atmana akasha sambhudaha. Tasmat atmanaha. So there also Tat Shabda is used. So Bhashyakara says, here also Pullinga Shabda is used, Tasmat va edasmat, etc. So Pullinga can be used even in the context of Brahma Shabda, which is actually neuter, Nabhusalinga. That's the idea behind. So that's how Bhashyakara replies. Tasmat, that's why Nayam Doshaka. Tasmadva edasmad atmana akasha sambhudaha ityatra pullingenapi atmashabdena brahmanaha prakrtatvat. So in this context, Pullinga, masculine gender, also can be used in the context of Atmashabda. Yatu Bhargavi Varuni Vidya Anando Brahmedi Vejanaditi. So that's again Bhrigu it comes. Yadu Bhargavi Varuni Vidya Anando Brahmedi Vejanad. It is again Ananda is repeated. Abhyasa is for Ananda Shabda, not for Anandamaya Shabda. So that is another example is given here. That is Varuna's instruction to Bhrigu, his son and disciple, Varuni Vidya. There also you find here, Mayat Pratyaya is not used, Anandamaya is not used, Ananda is used. Which also shows Ananda is Brahman, not Anandamaya. Tasya Mayada Asravanad. There is no Maya Pratyaya. There is only Ananda used. Ananda Shabda, not Anandamaya Shabda. All these show that Abhyasa or repetition is not Abhyasa of Anandamaya Shabda, but the Abhyasa or repetition of Ananda Shabda. Mayada Asravana, then again, Priya Shirastvadi Asravanacha. There also, Tasya Priyameva Shiraga Modu Dekshina Paksha, etc. mentioned in the other Panchakosha Vivarana. But here it's not there. All these are, there is no Sudhi statement, that is Asravanatvad. No Sudhi statement. What is Sudhi statement? Priya Shirastvadi. Tasya Priyameva Shiraga. All these statements are not there in this context. Not only that, it's not Ananda Shabda that is used, but it is not Anandamaya Shabda that is used, but it is Ananda Shabda that is used. Anandamaya Shabda is not used, Ananda Shabda is used, and therefore the Abhyasa or repetition is not the Abhyasa of Anandamaya, but of Ananda. And that Ananda is Brahman. That is the thesis of Advaitins. Then final conclusion is this. Yuktam Anandasya Brahmatvam. So, in other words, Ananda is Brahman, not Anandamaya. And Ananda is the Pucham, the Pradishtha, the Asraya. Puchattum always means Asrayattum. That's the actual meaning of Pucha Shabda here. Puchattum means Asrayattum. So, Yuktam Anandasya Brahmatvam, because Ananda is repeated again and again. Tasmad Anumatramabi Vishesham Anasutya Na Sudeva Priya Shirastvadi Brahmana Uvodyati. Therefore, Tasma Anumatramabi, I mean, without any upadhi or avayava, you cannot think of conceiving Brahman. And if it is avayava, if it is sobadhika, then it is not Nirvishesha Brahman. It is only Savishesha, it is only Ishvara, Saguna Sakara Sankalpa, not Brahman. That's the idea. Therefore, Anandamaya cannot be Brahman. Ananda is Brahman. That's the idea behind. Therefore, and again, another point is the Sudhi is not trying to expound anything which is Savishesha, because it was indicated again and again, Vang Manasa Gochara Adikrama Sutehi. Avang Manasa Gocharatum. Or Vang Mana Gochara Adikrama Sutehi. That's the reason. There is a Vang Manasa Gochara Adikrama Sudhi. Avang Manasa. Yato Vajo Nivartande Aprapi Manasa Saha, etc. So therefore, without depending or without connecting with some upadhi, some vishesha, it is impossible for Brahman to be described in terms of having a Shira, Priya, etc. So Priya Shirastvaditvam is impossible without connecting Brahman with some upadhi. Only for Sobadhya Brahman can have Priya Shirastvaditvam. Tasya Priyameva Shiraga, etc. All these can apply only to a Savishesha Sakara Brahman, not to Nirvishesha Brahman. And another point is there, Nacha Iha Savishesham Brahma Pradipādeshitam. So Iha Savishesham Brahma Na Pradipādeshitam. Our purpose is not to explain or describe a Savishesha Brahman. Iha means this in this Brahmananda Valli, in this context, the Taittiriya text, The purpose is not to expound a Savishesha Sagara Brahman, but purpose is to expound the Nirvishesha Niragara Brahman. That is the purpose. The reason is given. Vang Manasa Gojara Adikrama Sutehi. So, a Sudhi statement that shows Adikramanam of word and mind. Something that is beyond any kind of description, beyond any kinds of five verbalizations, beyond Panchashabda Pravrutti. It should be Panchashabda Pravrutti Nishedha. Something that can be explained or defined or described in terms of Jadi, Dravya, Guna, Karma, etc. Sambandha, etc. That is Panchashabda Pravrutti Nishedha. And that applies only to Niragara, Nirvishesha, Brahman. That's why Nacha Iha Savishesham Brahma Pradi Pibadaishidam Vang Manasa Gojaradikramasyutehi Tasmad Annamayadishu Iva Anandamayepi Vikarartha Eva Mayad Viknyayu Na Prajudyarthaka. So here a refutation of Vartigara's hermeneutical twist of changing the meaning of Maya Pratyaya from Vikarartha to Prajudyartha, especially by interpreting Anandamaya Shabda. After interpreting Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya and Vijnanamaya in Vikarartha, the Vartigara says that Anandamaya should be interpreted in the Prajudyartha while interpreting Mayat Pratyaya. Bhashyakara says Tasmad Annamayadishu Iva. Just like Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manamaya, etc. Anandamaya api. In Anandamaya also, Vigarartheva Mayad Vijnayu. Mayad Pratyaya should be understood or explained or expounded in Vigarartha, not Prajudyartha. This is the important state of here. Now only one important statement. From here onwards you find the Bhashyakara gives the ultimate last analysis of the entire Adhikaranam in the light of his own views. In other words, what Bhashyakara said was this: Anadi, so Annadi Mayadivat hi Karyatmanaha Bhautikaha iha Adhikritaha Mayadaha cha atra Vigararthaka yada Annamaya ityadi, etc. So Annamaya also should be interpreted in Vigarartha. That point was well established here. Of course, here Vajaspati and others have given some very, very important observations. Vajaspati says in the Bhamadi, Yes Satyam Jnanam Ityadina Mandravarnena Brahmoktam Tadeva Ubayabhudena Brahmanena Supradhanyena Giyate Brahma Bhashyam Padishthaidi. That is again a statement indicating the importance of Tatparya Linga, that is Yat Satyam Jnanam Anandam Brahma etc. Ityadina Mantravarnena Brahmoktam. Brahman is indicated or expounded in this mantra Yat Satyam Jnanam Anandam Brahma, that is Upakrama. Tadeva Ubayabhudeni Brahmanena Supradhanyena Giyate. That again is expounded, but one important point, Brahmapada has got supradhanyam. It itself stands alone. Not as an avayava of Anandamaya, but it is this central principle, the ultimate reality. Brahma Bhashyam Padishthaiti, etc. So Siddhantin established till now that Anandamaya Padartha is Jiva or Vikara, nothing else. Anandamaya also is a Vikara. From a Lakshanika perspective, Brahma Bhashyam Padishtha is the ultimate Pramanam. There are many mantras indicated in different bhashyas. For example, in some of the commentaries they quote, Vaidikam Jaiminiyam cha yatra vakyam viruddhyati adhyaharadivi sutram Vaidikam tu yathasutam. The Kumarila Bhatta in Sloka Vartika says. Okay, now coming to the last paragraph. Sutrani tu evam vyakheyani. So, the continues. So, this is the Bhashyakara's final conclusion. Brahma Bhashyam Pradishta ityatra kim anandamaya avayavattvena Brahma vivakshide uta supradhanatvena iti. So, here is a samshaya can come. The Siddhantin view is emphasized. Before that, the samshaya, a doubt, is referred to. Sutrani tu evam vyakheyani. So the sutra should be interpreted in this manner. To begin with, there is a samshaya. Brahman pucham asaya. These are used. Brahma pucham pradishta. Brahma pucham pradishta. Ityatra kim anandamaya avayavattvena vinashanka Brahma vivakshati uta supradhanatvena. So here the word Brahman that is used because the word pucha is used. Pucha could mean avayava when you think of a bird. The tail is an avayava of a bird. Like that, this Brahman indicated or mentioned as an avayava, a part of Anandamaya? Or does it have independent existence? So, the first thought may be like this. Because the word pucha means tail avayava. Therefore, somebody may argue that it is only an avayava. Pucha sabdat avayava tvena iti. Suppose somebody says, a Purvapakshi may say, the word pucha means tail. Tail is an avayava. Therefore, pucha sabdat avayava tvena iti. Prapte, Bhashyakara says, uchyate. Siddhantin says, anandamaya abhyasad. So, there is this Anandamaya is repeated. Anandamaya is repeated. Now, here, in this particular context, Anandamaya Atma ityatra Brahma Bhashyam Pradishta iti supradhanameva Brahma Budhishyati. Anandamaya Atma mentioned here. That is also a mantra. Anandamaya Atma ityatra Brahma Bhashyam Pradishta iti. After explaining, after describing the five koshas, the Upanishad continues that Anandamaya Atma says that then ityatra Brahma Bhashyam Pradishta, that is emphasized. Which means here Brahman is used supradhana. It is by itself independent. It is not as an avayava of Ananda, but it is the ultimate pradishtha asraya, the essence, the support of Anandamaya. So if the Purvapakshi can argue, Brahma Bhashyam Pradishta is mentioned after Anandamaya, so that Brahman is mentioned as a pucha of Ananda, means avayava of Ananda. Bhashyakara says, no, it is supradhanatena, means itself, it is independent. It has got independent existence. The reason is, pucha sabda is gaunartha. Gaunartha means some guna. Guna means characteristics, properties, qualities. So what is the characteristic or quality of pucha for a bird? The pucha prevents the bird from falling. It supports the bird. So it accepts the guna. So in that case, pucha or Brahman has the quality of the characteristic of being the support of Anandamaya, or the asraya of Anandamaya. So pucha means asrayatvam. This is Siddhantin's view. And there are important statements. Asanne vasabhavadi. Ityasmin Nigamana sloki Brahmana eva kevalasya abhyasyamanatvad. So here also, asanneva is a bhagavadi, etc. Asad-brahmedi veched. If somebody thinks that he doesn't exist or he's asat, then he becomes non-existent. Now, such a statement cannot go along with Anandamaya. The Anandamaya, if you interpret Anandamaya as an Upasya, Devada, Ishvara, Paramatma, etc., this doesn't work. Because you don't say, well, I don't exist. You don't say that. In Advaitins' view, if somebody identifies himself as non-existence, then he becomes non-existent because he is denying his own identity, his own existence. So he becomes as good as non-existent. That statement doesn't go very well with Anandamaya meaning. I think we discussed this earlier when we discussed the Chandogya text with Bhashyam, some 2-3 sessions ago. That's why Brahmana eva kevalasya abhyasyamanatvad. Brahma Shabdan is repeated, the abhyasa is taking place for Brahma Shabda. Vikara Shabda na iti chet prajuryat. That is also another another sutra, that actually the sutra is emphasized, it reflects, literally it may reflect the view of Vrittigara, but it's not so. Bhashyakara says, Vigar Shabdena Avayava Shabda Abhipreda Puchamiti Avayava Shabda na tat sapradhanatvam Brahmana idi yuduktam tasya pariharo bhaktiveha. So here we have to give a reply to this, because it indicates karya or vikara. And also Vrittigara brings in the prajuryartha of maya pratyaya. Therefore, here Pucha Shabda is there, and Pucha Shabda is Avayava Vachi. Therefore, one may argue, Vrittigara may argue that Brahma Shabda doesn't have independent existence because it is indicated as a Pucham of Anandamaya. So that should be replied. A proper answer should be given. Atra uchyate nayam doshaka. Bhashyakara says nayam doshaka. There is no problem here. Prajuryat api avayava shabdo upapattehe. So in prajuryartha also this avayava shabda will be okay. So you don't make a difference. You don't improve your condition by bringing a new meaning to maya pratyaya artha. By bringing prajuryartha, you don't get freedom from being called avayavartha. Because even if he prajarya also, it can be avayava. It doesn't make any difference. But Vrittigara's view is that if he brings a new meaning, if he gives a new meaning to maya pratyaya by bringing prajuryartha, then he can give a proper answer to those who argue that Anandamaya is jiva with different avayavas, parts and so on. By bringing prajuryartha, he can give a higher meaning to Anandamaya Shabda. Bhashyakara says, even if you bringing a new meaning by bringing prajuryartha, then also it will become only avayava. It can only mean avayava bahulyam. Prajurya means avayava bahulyam. Prajurya means prayapati, avayava bahulyam. So, all these Panchakoshas got all these parts, Pucham, Moda, Priyameva Siddhaka, Uttarapaksha, Dakshinapaksha, etc. These are avayava bahulyam. So, Prajuryam can only mean avayava bahulyam. So, you don't improve the condition, the situation by bringing the new meaning of Maya Pratyaya is Prajuryartha. Nayam doshka Prajurya papi avayava prashabdopapattehi. Prajuryam prayapati avayava praye vajanam ityarthaka. Abundance of avayavas, different parts, that's what it means. Still, you will be a savayava entity. That's the idea behind. Annamayadinam hi siradishu puchandeshu aveveshu ukteshu anandamayasyabi siradini avayvandirani ukta aveva prayapatya brahmabucham pradishaityaka na aveva vivaksha yat karanam abhyasat iti sapradhanatam brahmana samarthidam. So here also, just like Anandamaya, Anandamaya, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, etc., their different limbs are indicated here. So Anandamaya also has got this indicated here. Therefore, in this context, just like the different avayavas are indicated in the context of the other koshas, panchakoshas, including Anandamaya, so also in the context of Brahma Shabda also, Brahma Pucham Pradishta is mentioned here. Pucham means avayava. But it doesn't really imply any avayava. It is only by context, by the force of the context, the particular Shabda used avayava. I mean, Pucha Shabda in the meaning of avayava. But actually it doesn't mean avayava. This idea behind. Na avayava vivakshaya. It doesn't mean avayava. So that is an important argument for Advaitins. That is, Annamayadinam hi siradishu puchandeshu avayaveshu ukteshu anandamayasyabi siradini avayavandarani ukta avayava prayapatya brahma pucham pradishaityaka. So, in all these koshas, anandamayasyabi siradini modo dakshina tasya priyameva shiraha modo dakshina paksha etc. So all these avayavas are mentioned to avayava prayapatya. So they also got avayavas. Similarly, Brahma Pucham Pradishta also is used, and the word Pucham here may look an avayava, but it is not avayava. It is only by force of context, or it comes in the same language, the force of language. Otherwise, it doesn't really mean avayava. It doesn't really mean pucha in the sense of avayavartha. It only means asrayatvam. That's the meaning here. Na avayava vivakshaya. Yat karanam abhyasat iti sapradhanatam brahmana samarthidam. Because the word Brahman is repeated again and again. Satyam jnanam anantam brahma and upakrama, and then Brahma Pucham Pradishta and upasamhara. And in between, Ananda Shabda is used as abhyasa, repetition of Ananda Shabda, in the sense of Brahman. Therefore, Brahma Pucham Pradishta is the Adhikarana Vakyam, that is central topic here. Therefore, Anandamaya is not Brahman, rather Anandamayasya Asraya, Adhishthanam is Brahman. That's the meaning here. So Brahma Shabda has got Supradhanatvam. Brahmanaha Supradhanatvam Samarthidam. Yit Karanam Abhyasat. Because of the repetition again and again, because Brahman is Sarvadhara. Anandamayasya Pradishtha. Vartikara says Anandamaya Ishvara, because Ananda Prajura. Bhashyam says Anandamayasya Adhara is Brahman, Sarvadhara, that is Brahman, Asaya, etc., Pradishta, etc. Another point is Tasya Brahmanaha Sarvakarya Heduttasya Vadesha, that is a Govindananda says Ratna Prabha. So Ratna Prabha is one of the important commentaries. Govindananda Ratna Prabha says Tasya Brahmanaha Sarvakarya Heduttasya Vipadeshad. That Brahman is the Hedu, the Karanam, the source of all Karyas. And here Anandamaya is also a Karya. Anandamaya is not anything else. Anandamaya is also a Karya. So, Karya here includes Anandamaya also. Because Brahman is the innermost of all, including Anandamaya. The next is Tat Hedu Vivadeshacha Tasarvasya Sarvasyahi Vikarajadasya Sa Anandamayasya Karanatvena Brahma Vipadisyate. That's also Tat Hedu. Tat Hedu here means Tasya Brahmanaha Sarvakari Heduttu Vipatesha. That's a description given by Govindananda in Bhashyam Prabha. That is, Tasya Brahmanaha Sarvakari Heduttu. It is the Hetu, the Karanam, the cause, the source of all Karyas. And all the koshas, that is Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. These are all Karyas, or Karyatma. Not Karana, Karyatma. And Brahman is the Karanam, the source, the Hetu of all. That Tasya Hetu Vyapadeshacha. That's the meaning. Sarvasyahi Vikarajadasya Sanandamayasya Karanatvena. So, all Vikaras, all effects, all Karyas, that is Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and also Anandamaya is also included. Sanandamayasya Vikarajadasya. The Vikarajadam includes Anandamaya also. Anandamaya is also Vikara. One of the modifications of Ananda. Karanatvena. Karanam, the source, the cause, the hetu of all these karya manifestations. Brahma Vyapadishyade idam sarvam asrujada yadidam kinja. That's again, he created all these srishti, that is srishti vakya is meant, srishti sruti. Brahman is the cause of all the five koshas. Idam sarvam asrujada yadidam kinja. Brahman created all this, including all the five koshas, including Anandamaya. So Anandamaya also is one of the vikaras of the same Ananda. Anandamaya is also vikara of Ananda. Ananda is Brahman. Ananda or Brahman is the cause of all vikaras of Ananda, including Anandamaya. Iti nacha karanam sad brahma savikarasya anandamayasya mukhya vrittya avayava upadyate. Now one important point is this. See, how can Brahman be an anga, a part of itself? So, Anandamaya is a vikara, or it comes from Ananda or Brahman. So, how can it be a part of Anandamaya? How can the cause be a part of the effect? It is ridiculous. So, Bhashyakara says, Nacha Karanam Sad Brahma. So, Karanam here means Tasya Brahmanaha Sarvakara Hedutva Vyapadeshat. That Ananda or Brahman is the Sarvakarya Hetu. And Sarvakarya or Karyatma includes Anandamaya also. So, Nacha Karanam Sad Brahma. So, Vikarasya Anandamayasya Mukhya Vrittya Avayava Upapadyate. How can the Karana be a product or a part of Karya? It's impossible. Aparanyapi sutrani yadhasambhavam puchavakya nirdishtasyaiva brahmana upapadagani drashtavyani. So, all other sutras are to be interpreted as already mentioned here, that is Brahman as Pucha, Asraya, Pradishtha, Adhishthanam this Brahman is the Pradishtha, Asraya, Adhishthanam of all other Karyas, including Anandamaya. In other words, all the five koshas are nothing but Karyas or effects or maybe modifications of Ananda, that Ananda itself is Brahman. So Anandamaya itself is a modification of Ananda. Anandamaya is a modification of Ananda. Just like Annamaya is a modification of the same Ananda. Everything is a modification of the same Brahman, which is Ananda. That's the idea behind. That's why, so that's a, all sutras are to be interpreted as Brahmanaka Upadagani, expounding the same Brahman as the Asraya of everything, all the five koshas, including Anandamaya. So this is the end of this particular Adhikarana. I don't know if we have got time, maybe we will conclude today. If you are still, I want to know whether you have any doubt, then we will go to the next Adhikarana.
So here Anandamaya is the Karya of Ananda.
Yeah.
And it's a Vikara. So
remember, Ananda is Brahman. Ananda is Brahman.
Ananda is Brahman.
Yeah.
Ananda is Brahman, Anandamaya is Vikara.
Yeah.
So what does this Ananda here, that this Anandamaya Kosha, then little bit this confusion is that is there Ananda, you see, it is Prachurya Artha, it is said,
Yeah.
okay, that Anandamaya Kosha is filled with this Ananda. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right interpretation?
So remember, that should be corrected. Say, Anandamaya, in the Anandamaya, the Maya Pratyaya should be interpreted as in Prajuryartha. That is not Advaiting's view. That's a view of Vrittikara. So the particular sutra should be understood in that context. That particular sutra, you find Vikara Shabda, na iti chet, na prajuryad. So remember, Vrittikara, in this, using, this is called the Purvapaksha Sutra. Purvapaksha in contrast to Advaita. But it is a Siddhanta in relation to the previous view. So that's why you should read the whole thing, At the beginning, there is one view, that is Anandamaya Abhyasa, that is a sutra. Anandamaya here means Jiva or Pradhanam, which is Achetanam. That view is refuted by Vrittikara. And Vrittikara, in order to refute that in the context of Anandamaya, he says Maya Pratyaya should be interpreted in Prajuryartha only in Anandamaya context. Now, okay, so that way Vrittikara tries to make a distinction between Anandamaya and other four koshas. Advaitin's view is, it is true that Anandamaya is innermost compared to the other four koshas, but still, as Anandamaya is not the final one, there is something even innermost of that Anandamaya, that is Ananda or Brahman, that is a Pradishtha. So Vrittikara doesn't include Brahma Bhashyam Pradishtha in his discussion. It doesn't go beyond Anandamaya. For him, that's the end. So for him, Anandamaya is innermost of Vijnanamaya. Okay. Beyond Anandamaya, nothing is mentioned in the Taittiriya text. So he says that means that's the end. Bhashyakara says, no, that cannot be the end. There is something innermost of even this Anandamaya. And that is the real Karana, the cause, the Hedu. So compared to that, even Anandamaya is also a Vikara. Remember, Vikara means the effect. So according to Siddhanta, Advaita, Anandamaya is also a Vikara of Ananda. But not according to Vrittikara. So remember, there are three layers, main layers of argument in this Adhikaranam. So you have to read from beginning to end. If possible, you can look at the text, then you understand. So it's not a single Purvapaksha Siddhanta encounter here. Vrittikara appears most of the time, is the one who argues, who refutes the views of Jiva Pakshavada, the school that says that Anandamaya means Jiva. Bhashyakara said 19th Sutra, after some time onwards, he comes, I have to say something more than this. This is not the end of the journey. So he says, that's the beginning. So please listen to the text if you want. If you again, I shall tell you where it begins. So, idam tu iha vaktavyam. So, From here onwards, Shankaracharya begins his discussion. Up to this, it is only Vrittigara and his opponent. His opponent is Jiva Pakshavada. Okay? Point. Clear to you? I don't know. You can continue. If you're not clear, you can ask again.
Yes, Maharaj. I got it.
Yeah, thank you. So read again. Remember, this class is meant to be followed later. You can listen again and again with your text in your mind, in your hands. You can follow. It's a technical book. So the text is meant to be studied by those who finish all the Upanishad Bhashyas, because there are references to what Bhashyakara said in the Upanishad Bhashyas. But since most of you may not have gone through those, at least the whole text, so Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya are very important for understanding. Other Upanishads also are referred to here. So try to follow the class with the text in your hand. Okay? Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Maharaj.
Maharaj, I have one generic question, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Maharaj, when we say innermost with this, all the Pancha Koshas as we proceed, within Annamaya Kosha is Pranamaya and so on. However, in the general principle of Vedanta, we say that the Sukshma or the subtler one pervades the grosser one.
Yeah.
So it should really be like Annamaya is contained within Pranamaya. Manomaya should be vaster than Annamaya.
No, innermost. Innermost is idea behind.
Innermost?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Innermost, the essence of it. Already I have already explained this in the innermost. And remember, when you use the word Sukshma, Sukshmatara, Sukshmatama, when it comes to Brahman, Sukshmatara, this Taradama Pratyaya and all this, even this the comparative degree, this is more Sukshma than this, when all these comparisons are irrelevant when you come to Brahman.
Yes.
So the Sukshma, Sthula, Bheda doesn't apply when it comes to Brahman. That's why Anandamaya is Sukshma only when compared to the other four koshas. But that's why Bhamadigara and others says, Na Sarvasmad. Anandamaya is certainly more innermost, so to speak, compared to other four koshas. But actually, it is not the most. Actually, the ultimate reality cannot even be called Sukshmatama. That word doesn't apply here. That comes later. In fact, so Vedanta evolves like this. In this statement, in this Adhikarana, of course, it is more advanced. Next Adhikarana, it comes again, they understand what it means. In the next Adhikarana, let me see, that sutra is Antaha Tad Dharmopadeshat. Actually, here we are entering another line of argument. For example, in the earlier Adhikaranas, we mentioned that Brahman is Jnaya, not Upasya. Upasya always Sabhishesha Saguna Sakara. Jnaya means Nirguna Nirapeksha, Niravayava or Nirvishesha, the ultimate reality. Now the point is, there are those who may not be ready for understanding this. What to do for them? So they have to do some upasana. They should think of some upasya. So that whole discussion of the next adhikarana is based on what's the nature of that upasya. I will not begin today, but just for information, just say, I will discuss later. Hiranmayo Devadatma Kimva Aso Parameshwaraha Maryadadhara Ruboktehe Devadatma Ivaneshwaraha. That is how it begins. The subject is the one Hiranmaya Purusha is mentioned here as an Upasya. For those who are not Adhikaris for understanding this Brahmabhuchyam Pradishtha, etc. So there's a connection between one Adhikarana and the following Adhikarana. It's called Sankati. We'll discuss that. Next one, this is Drishtanta Sankati, it is called here. Anyway, that's we'll discuss later. I'm not going to discuss here. So there's a connection between one Adhikarana and the following Adhikarana. So the Hiranmaya Purusha, this Adaya Esondaraditya Hiranmaya Purusho Drishyade, etc. Hiranyasmasu Hiranyakesha, etc. This is a Chandogya Vakya. Who is this golden person? This effulgent entity, divine person. Is he a Devata? Somebody who has a lot of Punya karmas, lot of yagas, yajnas, homas, lot of Punya karmas and reached a higher level called Devata Vishesha. Or is it Ishvara? And Siddhanti will say it is Ishvara, Upasya. And the Puravakshin say no, it is only Devata Vishesha, like that. You know, I am bringing this subject for discussion. Those who cannot understand, those who are not ready to understand this Jnaya Vastu. What is Jnaya Vastu? This the Nirvishesha Brahma. For them, that reach the level of spiritual fitness. For them, they have to do Vasana. Upasana could mean. Here, of course, in this, you have to remember in the Brahma Sutra Bhashyam, in most of the cases, it is Devodopasana is mentioned here, not Pauraniga, Aidhikasika worship. For example, Aditya Vasana mentioned in the Vedic literature is different from Aditya Puja that you do here. You remember, see the difference. When you do Aditya Puja, it is Pauraniga ritual method. Aditya Upasana is only meditation method. Remember. So Upasana here always Dhyanam. So it's a Vedic context. So you need to, slowly you will understand this again and again as you go further. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So another point which I want all of you to keep in mind, you may not fully understand when I'm explaining this. But as you listen to this more and more, in course of time, your own mind will begin to evolve. You don't have to do yajna, yaga or anything, because you're all spiritual seekers. So your own mind will naturally evolve to a higher level of perception of the spiritual teachings, So at the beginning, don't get disappointed if you don't get everything. We are not teaching, I'm following the tradition of the Pandits, but I don't want you to learn the way a Pandit is learning. It's only a profession. Here, you're all spiritual seekers. So even if you don't understand the actual meaning of many of the statements, because you don't have the background of Purvamimamsa, Vyakarana, Nyaya, and other Prasthanatraya Bhashyas. So it doesn't matter. Once you listen, gradually you will understand, you'll be able to make a sense of what I'm explaining. Why? Because you're all spiritual seekers. So you don't have to get disappointed if these are very technical. Actually, this is studied only by those who have finished all the Prasthanatara Bhashyas. Desa Upanishad Bhashya, Gita Bhashya, and all the Prakaranas and all that. But it doesn't matter. Even if the complicated arguments with the Purvamimamsakas or Vijnanavadins, Shunyavadins, all you will understand. You will be able to make a sense of it from a spiritual seeker's perspective. And that is what is meant. Okay? So even if you don't understand, slowly when you listen, you will understand your own ability to understand it evolves, grows more and more. Thank you. Okay? Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Okay.